Elisabeth Kendall from Girton College, Cambridge, joins us, a Middle East expert. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Kendall. What do you suppose Netanyahu means when he says they're just getting started against the Houthis?
I think what he means is that in Israel's attempts to pull apart Iran's so-called axis of resistance, the Houthis are next. So having dealt with Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, now it's time to turn his attention to the Houthis. And we have already seen Israeli airstrikes against the Houthis 4 times, in fact, since July. But what's different now is that this is the second time in the space of a week, and that the focus of these latest strikes at ports, power stations, and now the airport, this is civilian infrastructure, not just military infrastructure, and that's going to hurt. And it's part of a new escalating tit-for-tat between Yemen's Houthis and Israel.
Well, Tim Marshall earlier wondered how much damage, what kind of threat the Houthis pose to Israel. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so the Houthis are a threat without actually having hit Israel that many times. Now, up to now, they've sent just about 400 missiles and drones at Israel. Now, hardly any of them actually get through. But think about it this way. If you're in Israel, Houthis, whether or not their missiles have got through, have sent Israelis running to their bomb shelters 4 times just over the past week. And so that's very disruptive, and they can have a massive psychological and economic impact without actually doing that much physical damage. And also from Israel's point of view, I think this is going to be quite a tricky challenge, because dealing with the Houthis in Yemen is very, very different from dealing with Hamas in Gaza or Hezbollah in Lebanon. Those latter two were pretty much neighbors, whereas Yemen is, of course, over 2,000 kilometers away from Israel. And the topography is quite challenging. The Houthis come from strongholds up in the north of the country. So if they need to hide away, if their leaders need to blend into mountainous hideouts in the highlands, they can do that. And also just consider the area, the size of the bit of Yemen that the Houthis rule over is about 20 times the size of Lebanon, and in fact about 500 times the size of Gaza, and their population is much greater too. So it's going to be a very difficult challenge for Israel.
And briefly, although I appreciate there's not a brief answer to this, Iran seems relatively quiet in response to this dismantling of everything it's set out to do. Build this, what they call it, this ring of fire around Israel. I mean, surely something grave is going to happen sooner rather than later.
Well, that is the concern, but you have to think about it like this. Iran has been severely degraded. Its air defenses were pretty useless against the 2 exchanges of missiles that Iran and Israel have had so far. And with its different levers being knocked out, there was Hamas, there was Hezbollah, and of course the Assad regime in Syria is down as well. It's really just the Houthis who are its main lever left. So I would expect that the Houthis will continue, both under their own steam and possibly under instruction from Iran too. I think that's where the war is going.
Thanks very much indeed, Dr. Elisabeth Kendall from Girton College, Cambridge.